so you understand, we had a totally divided country for 8 years, and long before that, in all fairness to President Obama, long before President Obama, we have had a very divided. I didn't come along and divide this country. This country was seriously divided before I got here.
He was talked about the 16-year plan to destroy America, 8 years of Obama, and then 8 years of Hillary. You can go back and see it's been going on much longer than that, since at least the foundation of the Federal Reserve. And you can see these people carrying out the plans of the Council on Foreign Relations and really trying to create the globalist one world government. And I think it's really sad that when we have so much access to open source information and data, how little people do research on their own and how willing they are to accept the narrative that's given to them every night by the media.
Friends, just want to let you know, Virtual Shield is one of the best VPNs in the world. They won't log your data or sell it like your internet provider probably does, so your privacy and anonymity is assured. It's the easiest, fastest, and safest VPN available, and it's extremely affordable. And Virtual Shield's IdentiSafe feature offers an additional layer of protection by preventing would-be hackers from accessing your computer camera or microphone. And yes, it even works on Windows. Take that, Bill Gates. And this month, if you buy an annual Virtual Shield protection program, you'll also get a free 1-year subscription to IdentiSafe. So check it out. I'll leave a link in the information section below this video. Hey friends, thank you so very much for tuning in. You know how much we appreciate it. It's time to talk Q, resignations, sealed indictments, the deep state, and so much more. Look, in my last interview with 412 Anon and Pamphlet, who critics claim is Q, which is preposterous, we covered resignations, sealed indictments, and pedo arrests. Folks, the Great Awakening is real. And today our friend 412 tweeted out, "Hey everyone, I just updated the resignation dashboard. There are now over 3,600 high-profile resignations. Please retweet to help spread the word," to which I responded, "It's real, folks. Another interview with 412 Anon about Q resignations, sealed indictments coming soon. And remember, real Donald Trump dismantled Hillary Clinton's 7th floor State Department shadow government, and now that witch flies commercial. Swamp, meet the drain." It's my pleasure to welcome back 412 Anon. How are you, sir?
Very well, Sean. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming back on. And Pamphlet and his lovely wife, Radix Verum, which apparently is Latin for the root of truth. Welcome.
Howdy.
Hi.
Good to be back.
Yeah, good to have you back. We have a lot to talk about. And without further ado, I'll just turn it right over to 412. And you updated the resignations dashboard, my friend. It's a big deal. We covered this in the last interview. When you resign from a position of power and influence in a corporation, you take away your lifeblood, you take away your income for your family. Nobody resigns unless they're forced to. It's been my experience anyway. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, there are some instances where you might resign without being forced, but for the most part, that's a sign that, you know, you're being shown the door, and it's an optics, you know, calling it a resignation rather than being fired or terminated. But yes, they are significant, especially for these
younger guys, man. I mean, it's huge. Yeah, like you said, they don't leave unless they're in a position where they have essentially no choice.
Well, you know, actually, 412, you made a good point. It would be logical for somebody who discovers they're working for a very corrupt apparatus to resign because that person is filled with integrity. We don't see that very often. We see people work for the likes of Merck or the likes of Monsanto for careers that go on because they're well paid, people that work for big pharma. There are many people that work for corrupt organizations and organizations that do harm that never resign. I think what's important about these 3,600 plus resignations is if you look at the names of these people and you look at the positions of power that they're in, and then you look at what Q has been saying, and I know you wanted to highlight Q posts 1660 and 1661. Why don't you take us through it and break it down? And guys, I do want to add for those who have been following Q, Q has been quiet since July 4th, which is not unprecedented, but it is a little bit unusual.
It's definitely the longest period he's been silent. Cheat day, whatever.
Yeah.
So over 2 weeks, about 2 weeks on the dot. Yeah,
I think this would definitely be the longest period of darkness from Q, but I'm sure there's a good reason for it, and that's something maybe we can dive into a little bit later. But yeah, I did want to start off by, and I'll bring it up on the screen here. So I did want to start off just by reading a portion of 1660, and then it says, "Is any of this normal? Think sealed indictments. Think resignations of CEOs. Think resignations of senators. Think resignations of Congress. Think termination of senior FBI. Think termination of senior DOJ. Media blackout," because obviously the mainstream media isn't looking at the big picture the way we are. And then an anon made a comment that says, "Look at the numbers. It doesn't seem to be slowing down or wrapping up either." And this was back in, this was a couple weeks ago here, in early July. If we look at the dashboard, the resignation dashboard, and again, if you want to find these, the easiest way is just to follow me on Twitter, 412anon87. I pin a tweet at the very top with all of these linked, so that's the easiest way to get to them. But here, if we look at the resignation dashboard, as this loads here, while this loads, I want to give a shout out to Resignation Anon is the one who updates and keeps the list of resignations up to date and accurate. He spends tons of time going through the different articles and making sure the data is correct. And if this ever loads here, I will I'll show that I've actually embedded the original list into the dashboard so people could see the source data. A few people were asking me to do that on Twitter. So, and Resignation Anon does a weekly show, a weekly recap on our friend Grand Torino's channel. That's Grand Space Torino. He's our Irish patriot that contributes over at Patriot Soapbox 24/7. They do a weekly update on Sundays if you guys are interested. This doesn't seem to want to load. Try and refresh.
I think it's also interesting. It seems to be like totally unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it. The CEO resignations combined with the number of career politicians that are suddenly not seeking re-election and are going to be resigning. And then the cleaning of the FBI and the DOJ, the cleaning of the 7th floor of the State Department. For people that say nothing's happening and, this is just part of the deep state plan and Trump is a Rothschild agent or plant, I would just say look at the bigger picture here. Obviously, things are getting done.
Yeah. So we don't really even need this to load all the way for me to make the point that I wanted to make. You can see the trend is strong, and that's essentially what I wanted to show is, there are still just as many resignations as when this really exploded back here towards the end of 17, beginning of 16. So things are still happening. So if people are wondering why the indictments aren't being unsealed yet, why we're not seeing, the big name arrests, let's just look at the indictment dashboard. We have June was even bigger than May. This is it's been consistently over 5,000 indictments a month since February. And it's not slowing down. You can see the trend started to go down a little bit, but it just reversed again. So who knows? They might not be as close to completely wrapping all of this up as we think they are. You'd expect this is unsealed indictments. When you start to see this trend here, then you might be thinking it's time to get ready. When this trend moves from over here to over here, I think that's when, it might be time to get ready to see some big stuff. But from the looks of it, they are still very much in the middle of getting their ducks in a row before they move forward.
Hey, 412, let me ask you something.
Sure.
There's a vocal critic, of course, many vocal critics now aligned against Q. And one vocal critic in particular, David Seaman, has accused those who have tallied these numbers of resignations and sealed indictments, I think specifically is the one that he was rallying against in a video not too long ago. He said, "You idiots added it up wrong." Your thoughts on the numbers of resignations and or the numbers of sealed indictments. Did we get the numbers wrong, or are the numbers really this impressively large?
Well, as far as the resignations go, just go look at the source data. It's right there. Every single one of those is linked to an article citing, every one of those is cited. I don't want to, talk bad about anybody, but David Seaman's been kind of off base for a little while now. I don't know what's going on with him. I used to have a lot of respect for him when he was just covering Pedogate and trying to get the word out there about that. But, he jumped on this whole pamphlet is Q nonsense. He's been, spreading some misinformation for a little while now. And, as far as these sealed indictments go, I can't remember the name of the service or the website, but you have to pay to be able to get these. What's that?
Pacer.
Pacer. Yeah. That's where these come from. The person who got these, people are paying to source this data. I stand by it. I think it's completely legit. I think David Seaman is just, like you've put it a few times, just one of these people that are trying to throw a turd in the punch bowl. I don't know what his true motivation for doing it is. I don't want to speculate on that, but I think he knows that he's giving misinformation. I don't think he's doing it innocently. I think it's deliberate. Why he's doing it, I'm not sure. I wish he would stop. But honestly, I think his last live stream that I saw had like 80 viewers, so I'm not too worried about his outreach.
Well, in Verum, I want your thoughts on this, but I think we can all agree that if Q is nothing but a LARP, and if there's truly nothing happening behind the scenes, if the deep state is not at risk, if the resignations aren't real, if the sealed indictments aren't real, if none of this is real and it's all just a big hoax, it would wither on the vine pretty darn quickly. Meanwhile, we have former CIA counterintelligence officer Philip Mudd appearing on CNN Live with Anderson Cooper on the 18th of July. And he said this.
Curious point in American government. When do we see almost a shadow government come out and say, we cannot side with the government? When do we see almost a shadow government come out and say, we cannot side with the government?
And the headline below that video says, Putin wants to weaken U.S. through election meddling. They continue to parrot this BS narrative that the election was hacked by Putin and his spies when you and I know that it was Seth Rich, who was the DNC leaker who provided the emails to WikiLeaks Assange. And Kim.com has offered to come out and provide evidence of that to Robert Mueller. Mueller doesn't want to hear it. CNN won't report about it. Where is the DNC server, which would prove all of it? Asks our president. And still, the mainstream horror media is silent about those facts and is more than eager to bring on a CIA counterintelligence asset like Philip Mudd, who openly says, when will the shadow government step in and dethrone Trump? It's absolute insanity. And anybody with two brain cells to rub together is waking up, which I think is why we have the hashtag walk away movement. Even hardcore leftists are waking up. Verum, your thoughts on the sealed indictments, on the David Seaman claims, of any of that? I know you like to dive deep into this stuff.
Before you do that real fast, just also a reminder to everybody that Philip Mudd was also the one that came on there and said the government's going to kill this guy, talking about Trump, when Putin had sent home a handful of American intelligence assets. He kicked them out essentially, and Trump responded by saying, "Well, I should thank him. We need to cut our payroll anyway." And Philip Mudd responded, "The government's going to kill this guy." So this isn't the first time he said something kind of creepy like that. But yeah, go ahead, Radix.
Yeah, well, first of all, as far as David Seaman goes, maybe a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago, and I think it was about a month and a half ago, he did a live stream saying he had seen the sealed indictments and that they were real and that QAnon was real. And he got called out for it by Q. Q said no outside comms. Nobody has seen the indictments. They're still sealed. This is how the law works. If that had been the case, guess what? If people have seen this stuff and word starts getting out about it, you taint juries. You can't have that. That's why it's all being kept quiet. And that's why they're doing it outside of DC jurisdiction. And so, as far as the mainstream media goes, they were the ones that refused to even acknowledge there was a shadow government. And now they're happy to acknowledge there is one, and they're saying it should rise up and overthrow our elected president. So if none of this is happening and it's all a LARP, why are they so threatened by him? You have people like John Brennan on MSNBC saying this Helsinki summit was treason. And which is funny, coming from Brennan, who voted for the Communist Party in 1976, who spied on the Senate Intel Committee, who altered Obama's passport records in 2008. That's rich. And who also, during 2012, it came out in Vault 7 that the CIA meddled in France's election.
All great points. No, you're right. And I made the point in a recent video that it's hypocrisy for John Brennan to call our president a traitor, when clearly John Brennan is not only a traitor. According to Robert David Steele, who I just interviewed, he's probably a foreign intelligence asset. He's probably being paid by a foreign government, and that government may be Israel. We can speculate. I don't know, but he certainly is not a patriot.
Right. Absolutely not. So, you know, also you kind of see the marriage now really coming out in the open of the intelligence community and the mainstream media. And they have no problem putting people like Clapper on, and Comey and Brennan and Mudd. And, you know, I think that's really interesting, putting these people out on display so they can rally against our president. And I think it just highlights, like you said, those who scream the loudest have the most to hide. These people are scared. They're desperate. They're coming out into the open. And one of the other things Q has said is they've never been this exposed before, and they're having to come out into the open to fight back. And I think that's obvious.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that I think we're in a civil war right now. It's it hasn't come to, you know, open fighting in the streets. Thank God. It's a peaceful civil war, but it's definitely a civil war between the deep state and the elected government. It's a civil war between the shadow government forces aligned against the republic and this president. And so this whole idea of a great awakening is so important because we can all find common ground in some very simple things: the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. And that's why this walk away movement is so important. People on the left are saying, hey, these hardcore Antifa leftists, these George Soros forces that are showing up at rallies that I want to go to, where I can speak out against Trump because I don't like him, that's fine. But these people are violent, and they're carrying signs that say free speech, and they're burning them. These people don't represent me. I don't want anything to do with these people. I'm walking away. And these videos that women and men are posting all over YouTube about their walk away awakening moment is very, very important, because those people and us can come together to restore our government and back the president. I mean, what choice do we have? Either we do that, or we get people like Philip Mudd and Comey and Mueller and Brennan and Clapper running a government for the benefit of themselves and their rich oligarch buddies for the rest of history. That's it. That's our choice. Our choice is very clear.
Yep. Yeah. You know, it's funny, they're running out of narratives to hide behind.
That's right.
When this walk away movement, you see all these videos by all these real people, actual people out there explaining their stories. And what do they fall back to? They call these people bots. They call them Russian bots.
Seeing how some of my left friends were reacting to a young man showing up at a college wanting to speak, it went against every ideal I held as an American, as a staunch defender of the Constitution. Freedom of speech is incredibly important to me. To see people that I thought were reasonable actually advocating that other people should have their freedom of speech limited because we don't agree with them, that is the most insane, scary concept. I can't even fathom that there are people I call friends that believe that.
Like, there's actual videos of actual people saying, I'm done with the Democrat Party, and that's all they have is these people are Russian.
Right. No, that's what I've been saying. I just said it to Harley Schlanger. I just said it to Robert David Steele. The deep state is all in. They are all in. If this is a poker game, they move their chips all in. There's no backing away now for them. And so we have to protect this president, because he's the last line of defense between what potentially could be liberty for the American people in perpetuity, or the deep state running this country into the ground in perpetuity. That's the choice. So that's where we stand. And Harley Schlanger said in my recent interview with him, this is an important inflection point in history. For Brennan to come out and call Trump a traitor is really threatening the life of the president, because that's a capital crime. So they're basically saying Trump should be put to death for being a traitor when it's the deep state that is the traitors. So this is very important. It's an inflection point in history. We need to stand together. And let's go back to those Q posts, 1660 or 61. And why don't you bring us back up to speed, 412?
Well, I pretty much had covered what I wanted to say there. I just wanted to show with the charts and the dashboards that, and just speak to some of the impatience we're seeing from people wanting the big name arrest, wanting to see the whole house of cards come down. I just wanted to show that it hasn't slowed down. Like they are still wrapping things up. They're still tying up loose ends, and you can just see it in the sealed indictments trend. It's going up again. We had more sealed indictments filed this month than we did last month. So my message is to just be patient, let this thing play out, let them do what they're doing. They're obviously trying to do this in one huge sweep. And they're keeping a lot of it quiet in the background while they do their investigations and file these indictments. That's really all I wanted to get across as far as those two Q posts and the data goes. Okay.
All right. Well, let's do this then. Let's talk about the deep state apparatus and the corruption, because as you guys know, it's very, very difficult to unwind this shadow government control over the elected government. That this has been in place since long before George H.W. Bush, the former CIA director, became president. But he was really pushing it over the goal line. He talked about wanting the New World Order more than 200 times in public speeches. So very open about, I think, who he represented, the powers that he represented, and now people understand that. They didn't then. Then we had Clinton. I like to say the Bushes made the Clintons. Then we got Obama. I like to say the CIA created Obama. But of course, before that, we got the son of the former CIA director, George Bush Jr. And then we get Obama, creation of the CIA. And then we were going to get Hillary Clinton. And Q has said, pure evil. It would have been, quote unquote, hell on earth. And I firmly believe that. She would have pushed this thing over the goal line. So let's talk about the real treachery. Let's talk about Uranium One. Radix, I know that you guys have done a lot of work and research into the area of Uranium One and the real treachery going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, we're actually going to be tonight presenting source documents on Uranium One that I don't think have been seen before. We got the bill of lading. And it's not 20% or 25% of our uranium that was sold to Russia. It was a lot more than that. We're going to be presenting that tonight at 7 at Patriot Soapbox. We're going to be showing the bill of lading, and we're going to talk about some of these companies and the interconnections of these people. So I don't want to say too much because I don't want to get in trouble and ruin the show and let the cat out of the bag. But I'd say tune in tonight. And really, we're taking the timeline back to the 1990s because the Clinton Foundation and Bill Clinton, they were planning this before 2010 when the deal actually started and went through. It goes back to 2004 and the Clinton Foundation in Kazakhstan. And really, I go and look back at Chinagate and the sale of our technology to China in exchange for campaign funds for Gore's and Clinton's reelection campaign. And that was never really highlighted like it should have been in the media. They were focusing on Monica Lewinsky. But I think this is all part of the plan to destroy America. And, Q has talked about the 16-year plan to destroy America, 8 years of Obama and then 8 years of Hillary. You can go back and see, it's been going on much longer than that, since at least the foundation of the Federal Reserve. And you can see these people carrying out the plans of the Council on Foreign Relations and really trying to create the globalist one world government. And I think it's really sad that when we have so much access to open source information and data, how little people do research on their own and how willing they are to accept the narrative that's given to them every night by the media.
No, that's 100% right. And I think what is so frustrating for those of us who, to say we're awake is such a vast understatement. We're educated about the crimes of Hillary Clinton, the DNC, and the deep state apparatus that supports her. We're educated about the fact that the DNC server will contain the information that will either prove or disprove the mockingbird mainstream narrative that the election was hacked by the Russians. But the DNC won't turn it over to the FBI, and the FBI doesn't seem to care about that. So we have a sitting president having to tweet to the American people who most of whom don't even understand what he's asking. And he says, where is the DNC server? Why hasn't the FBI gotten it? It would prove or disprove this narrative that CNN runs with ad nauseum 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, that Putin hacked the election. Now, if it can be proved that that's true by looking at the DNC server, why won't they do it? I think the answer is because it's going to prove that the emails were downloaded locally by someone, probably Seth Rich, who then was whacked because Podesa himself tweeted, "I'm all for making an example of the leaker." So back in October of 2016, John Podesta knew that it wasn't the Russians that hacked the server. It was somebody from within the DNC, because how else would they be able to make an example of the leaker, right? It was Seth Rich, and they whacked him. And the mainstream media won't cover it.
And I think it's far deeper than that. I mean, what we've been looking into CrowdStrike, and we have found that, you know, the CIA, the FBI, and Hillary Clinton appear to be using CrowdStrike software to tap, collect, and surveil information on people. And if you look at the people that are involved in founding CrowdStrike and funding it, Google, you know, funded it to the tune of $100 million before it even had any proprietary software out there on the market. They just, you know, gave seed money to it to start it up. They don't use that software. They won't use it. Why is that? And when you look at the people that created it and the people that are working for it, it's a revolving door of the FBI, you know, former Russian spies, and, you know, CrowdStrike is used by almost every federal agency and department in America. Why are we taking their word for it? Why not just produce the servers? And I think it's a lot worse than what we believe. It's not just the crimes of Hillary Clinton. It is the crimes of, you know, the entire shadow government. And I think that server really is going to bring down the House. So I'm going to start doing more digging on CrowdStrike and putting more information out there. I mean, and it's all sourced too.
Good. Like
their own presentations, their own website, they're filing documents.
Here's the thing. Here is the thing about the Great Awakening and Q information. Would you guys be doing the work you're doing were it not for Q? Would you guys have gone down these rabbit holes were it not for Q? I mean, do you think that Kim.com would get this response to his poll, which he just put up on July 17th? He asks, what is the biggest threat to the United States of America? Russia, terrorism, or the deep state? 91% of the 41,000 respondents said the deep state is the problem. People are waking up, and the enemies of this information don't want that, because once people wake up, they will lose total control, right? Because at that point, all that they're left with is a coup, a violent coup. That's the only card they would have left to play. And do you think that the tens of thousands of people that showed up for Trump rallies are going to stand for a violent coup of this president? So that's why I say all their chips are in. And the biggest problem facing the United States of America is the deep state.
That's why they're going after the guns so much.
Exactly.
They know that they can't pull off a violent coup because most of Trump's base is probably pretty heavily armed. So it wouldn't be a very easy thing to do. So I think that's why they're trying to go so crazy with the gun grabbing on the left.
You mentioned that we're in the middle of a war, a civil war, a war in general. You also mentioned the biggest problem being the deep state's stranglehold over the legitimate government. I think it goes even further than that. I would say the biggest problem we face in this war, this asymmetric war we find ourselves in, fourth generation warfare. It's the stranglehold they have over people's minds. I mean, war has always, in the end, been about hearts and minds, and whether that war is being fought on battlefields with guns and artillery, or on digital platforms like we find ourselves in the middle of now. That's what it's all about in the end, is changing people's minds. And I think the internet really they fudged up there, didn't they? It's once people see this information, there's no going back. I mean, you said, would any of us be doing this if it weren't for Q? I mean, heck no. I don't think a good portion of us were even aware of a lot of this going on. And as soon as this information gets out there into the hands of the people, there's no stopping it. Whether they have a stranglehold on government or not, once all those minds are changed, that's what scares them the most.
Yeah, if I could add on to that, to what Pam was just saying there, I think a lot of us would be diving down rabbit holes, but it would be unorganized and scattered. There's so much going on, right? And what Q did is bring us together. You know, it brings a whole truther community together, and then creates a laser focus on a certain rabbit hole, one at a time. You know, and then you have this powerful hive mind, as it's called, hyper focused on, let's just say, uranium-1, and then we're all tweeting and tagging uranium-1. We get that out there, and then maybe move into, you know, human trafficking, and that's like the laser focus. And now we're all simultaneously sharing about the human trafficking, whereas before you have people just going wherever. Yeah, they're spreading information. They're still truthers. They're still trying to get something across, but it's not. You don't have that focus on something specific. You don't have that teamwork, so to speak, for lack of a better term, of working together to really, really expand the reach of the message, to really get it trending, to get it out there beyond the echo chamber that, you know, we may exist in typically. So I think that's a big part of what Q is doing, is he's bringing together a lot of the voices that want truth and giving them the ability to focus their megaphone on one thing at a time. I think that's a lot.
I agree. I think here's the thing, guys. I think that, and I made this point in a recent video, I think that there's many Americans who are suffering from a hybrid form of Stockholm syndrome, because we've been lied to and deceived for decades. And so when you see the president, in this case, Trump, get lawfully elected and beat the wicked witch, and at his inauguration, he says this:
We are not merely transferring power from one administration to another, or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people.
When you hear a president say that, it stands in stark contrast to hope and change. To hell with the sovereignty of our country. To hell with lawful immigration. You know, to hell with America. We're globalists. We're better together when we're global. Trump stands in stark contrast to all that nonsense. And I think people on the left and right are waking up. Do you guys agree? Do you think people on the left are even starting to wake up a bit?
Well, I mean, just look at the walk away movement, right? I mean, that's been, and you brought that up earlier. That's a huge sign that things are changing. In droves, people are walking away. And it's because on the left, they've been discredited and proved to be hypocrites so many times that their message just keeps getting more and more radical. They keep isolating more and more of their base. They keep just pushing themselves further and further to where it's going to be the only people that consider themselves Democrats are, you know, hardcore socialists and communists. As our friend GT likes to say, suicidal maniacs. Like that's essentially that's essentially what they're like pigeonholing themselves into, is just a small sliver of the population that just is completely wacko, in my opinion.
Yep.
And I don't know how you guys feel about it, but
we were discussing this the other day on our show, Forum 2.
Yep.
this interesting pattern that we've kind of started to notice, them and the public that listen to them, they're following now. It's so funny. They do this over and over again. They screech at the top of their lungs about, it's like Chicken Little stuff. You know, the sky is falling. And of course, inevitably, the sky doesn't fall. And people start noticing that nothing really pans out with all these fear-mongering, fear-porn narratives that they keep pushing. And I think that's this is another thing we were discussing the other day. I think this is why they don't focus in one place for too long. I mean, you'll see the narrative change from, you know, Russia, Stormy Daniels, just over and over again. It's shifting, constantly shifting, because if they keep the people's attention in one place too long, people start noticing that nothing. It's all fake. It's all BS. Fortunately for them, at least for a while, people have short memories, and that's like I said, that's why they shift so quickly to so many different things, constantly moving, constantly shifting. But now we have the internet, and of course the internet does not forget. The internet's forever, and people are taking note and getting that information out there, whereas before they had a complete stranglehold over the
information
narrative. Exactly, over information in general. It was impossible to really find information on this, and people forgot quickly.
Yeah. They largely controlled the conversation. Now, the thing is here, as it pertains to the hardcore Soros left and the Soros-funded apparatus that opposes humanity and liberty and the sovereignty of the United States, the choice now that people are having to make is one of embracing this communist Marxist vision for our nation or embracing the Constitution. And again, anybody who is intellectually honest and actually has some measure of love for this country and for their family and for the future has to come down on the side of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. It's such a simple choice. And you're right, the hardcore left has pigeonholed itself into this unwinnable situation. Because again, as Kim.com tweeted out, what's the biggest problem? Is it the people aligned against the Constitution and the Bill of Rights? Or is it not? And the answer is it is, and it's the deep state. So before we part ways, guys, I wanted to ask you this. What are your thoughts, your individual thoughts, anybody can weigh in here, on Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton flying commercial on that Delta flight recently? Now, I know they've flown commercial in the past, but she hates people. Mm-hmm. There's nothing she'd rather do less than be in an airport surrounding by the minions she frowns upon and looks down on. She considers herself one of the elite.
She barely trying to hide it.
Yeah,
she's open about it.
The super predators and deplorables.
So there they sit in first class, I believe, on a Delta flight, trying very hard not to make eye contact with any of the passengers, especially her. She didn't want to make eye contact with anybody. And you guys know as well as I do that the Clinton Foundation has stolen at least, billions of dollars just from the people of Haiti alone. So we're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in pay for play. Putin has just alleged that they took another $400 million from intelligence agencies, which was funneled to her campaign. If they could fly private, which they should be able to afford, why were they flying commercial? Any thoughts?
I have.
I'm sorry. Because their assets are frozen. With Trump's executive order, they're seizing assets of people involved in this stuff, and I believe that that's what's happening. And also, of course, people only donated to the Clinton Foundation because they thought they were going to get access, as a result from that. And when she lost, she had to pay that money back, I believe. So I think that they're probably hurting for money.
It's either that.
Of course, Bill Clinton was reading a book while he's on the plane about a sexual predator.
Not just that, a pedo rapist.
A pedo rapist that rapes a 12-year-old. Go figure. What a coincidence.
But the other thing, and I don't know if Hillary Clinton is delusional enough to think she has a chance at winning in 2020. She might be trying to play an optics play, saying like, look, I'm just a commoner like you guys flying coach.
You're the unwashed.
Yeah. So I don't know if she's that delusional that she actually thinks that she should run again, because I'm hoping that she's going to be locked up by the time that would even come around. But if she is that delusional, that might be part of it too. But I don't know. That might be kind of long.
I had a thought on her running again. I bet you she's going to do it. This is going to fail miserably, but I think her whole reasoning, if indeed she is thinking of running again, I think it's to say, once all this starts coming out, it's so she has an opportunity to screech, "Oh, this is political opposition trying to slander me. This is a witch hunt. This is a political witch hunt. I'm trying to run for office, and they're just trying to stomp on my name and rub it through the dirt." I think that might be her goal, trying to use it as a cover to sort of protect herself.
It would be hard to believe that she would actually run for president again, right? Though, because she has no political capital. And even those that previously supported her now despise her. Look, again, Seth Rich. He was working for the DNC, and then he realized how corrupt it was and that they stole some 12 primaries from Bernie, and they were going to crown her with the nomination. And he got so angry about it, he wanted to get the word out. That's why he did what he did. And again, once people wake up, you can't unwake up. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. She has no political capital. She is almost universally despised in this country, except for maybe the hardest of hardcore lefties. And if she runs again, great, because she's going to lose again. And as I said in a recent video, thank God President Trump rides on Air Force One while she sits in first class on a commercial Delta flight. Thank God. And thank God he's in the people's house, as opposed to that which was going to sell it out to the highest bidder. And that's just the bottom line. So if she runs again, you know what? I don't think she'll be able to run again because hopefully she'll be in prison. Q has said 11/11, right?
Yep.
November 11th. Isn't that the key date? Are we going to start to see some serious arrests of high-level criminals between now and then?
Well,
I think it really, in the next couple weeks, maybe a month or so, I think it depends on optics, but I think the contents of the server are going to slowly start revealing themselves. And, you know, unfortunately, when you start talking about this stuff on Twitter, most people don't even know about the server. They're like, there is no server. You know, 12 Russians just hacked the DNC. It's like, no. When you start explaining it to them and say, no, there is a server, the DNC server. If it was hacked by these 12 Russians, simply produce the server so it can be forensically examined, rather than relying on CrowdStrike, a third party, you know, that has its own ties to Russian spies. Why not produce the server to the FBI directly to be forensically examined? And then, of course, there's Hillary Clinton's private email server that was run out of like a broom closet in her home in Chapaquita that was selling had improperly sending classified C-level intelligence and special access programs. So, you know, when you start explaining this stuff to people, that they can't argue with it. When you really lay it out, they can't argue with it. But some of them are so ignorant that, you know, they're so partisan, they can't accept it, and they'll just go, wah,
Stick their head in the sand, plug their ears, screech at the top of their lungs. That's how it goes.
Yeah. But some people you can reach, and when you lay it out for them piece by piece like that, you can reach them. So I think there's hope, and I think that, you know, in the next couple months, we're going to start seeing the crimes of these people. And once that happens, like you said, once the public is awakened, they're done. They're done. They're going to have the public support to go after these people criminally. People are going to want to see these people in jail for their crimes against humanity. And when the really bad stuff has been exposed, the trafficking, organ harvesting, pedophilia, the red shoes, when that stuff comes out, yeah, there's going to be no stopping it.
Yeah, and also keep in mind that I don't think they can actually have the military tribunals until 2019. Right. I think that's when the EO that Trump signed takes place is January 1. Yeah, so I think mostly what we're going to see is a lot of information coming out and really the build up to it. But as far as the actual,
arrests,
the actual justice happens, I think we might, it might be a late Christmas gift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for all the all this big stuff coming out, I hate making predictions just in case it doesn't pan out. But I would, if I had to guess, I would look to probably around October surprise, so to speak. I think a lot of this this bigger information is probably going to be timed for maximum effect in regards to the upcoming elections. That's how I would do it.
Well, we shall see. And, as Q has said, soon these people won't be safe walking down the street. And if all of that information comes out about Pizzagate, the red shoes, of course, refers to, I believe, human skin. Hard to believe, guys, but here's a photo of Tony Podesta standing around with a bunch of, I would imagine, Ivy Leaguers, all wearing red shoes. What do the red shoes mean? What's the significance of the red shoes? What's the significance of the kill room that Alefantis posted about on Instagram? What is the significance of all of it? Satanic ritual abuse, child sex trafficking, Epstein Island, the tunnels. It reminds me of the movie Hostel and Hostel 2, guys. There's some very, very sick, beyond imagination level sick stuff going on in this world. And it would have all continued to be covered up if the Wicked Witch was in the White House. I want to thank you guys so much for coming on today. It really means a lot to me. So we had Pamphlet and his wife, Radix Verum, and of course, 412 Anon. You guys keep up the good work, and thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Always a pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys, thank you so much. Oh, and remind us, the Soapbox live stream, how do we find you guys on YouTube?
You got it.
We are Patriot Soapbox 24/7 live stream. So I would just go into YouTube in the search button and type in Patriot Soapbox, and it comes right up.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, and Sean, I'd love to have you back on for another interview sometime if you'd be up for it. Our audience keeps asking me, when are you going to have Sean back on? When are you going to have Sean back on? So
That's great. No, you guys are the experts in so many of these areas. Look, all I'm trying to do is dispense the information to as large an audience as we possibly can, because literally together, if we can wake up our friends, neighbors, and colleagues, we are unconquerable. We cannot be stopped. If we could wake people up to the crimes of the deep state, and the deep state is now laying itself bare in the wide open, right, for everyone to see. If we wake people up to that, we can't be stopped. And that's what they're most afraid of. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We very much appreciate your support. For Real News 24/7, check us out at SGTreport.com, the antidote to corporate propaganda. And do follow me over on Twitter. And please check out the work over there on YouTube at SGT Report. We really love you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. God bless. Bye-bye.
Regarding the 2016 election and Trump, Brennan then sent teams over to work with the British. He and Clapper went to Comey, who's turning out to be a hapless halfwit. They went to Comey and said, you have to set up an investigation into this.